There's Sam.
Hey, how are you doing, Dr. Cole?
We're doing great. So great to see you.
Awesome, great to see you too.
Can you
Got
can
a,
you
got a
can
lot
you
of
hear me
good stuff
well?
coming up, that's for sure.
What's that?
We got a lot of good stuff to cover today, that's for sure.
We do. I'm going to turn my volume up so I can hear you well. Okay. How can you hear me well?
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Awesome. Okay. Well, I'll kick it off if that's okay with you.
No, please start it up.
All right. Well, great. Good evening, everyone, and thanks for joining us. This is Optimum Nutrition's Instagram Live. I'm Dr. Brian Cole. For those of you who don't know me, I'm an orthopedic surgeon in Chicago. I specialize in sports medicine. I have the privilege of taking care of a number of professional sports teams and athletes over the last 25 years. But I will tell you that close to my heart is gymnastics. Gymnastics is probably one of the most grueling athletes that I have to deal with on a regular basis. So I am distinctly honored to have Sam Mikulak with me this evening. Sam is a six-time all-around national champion in men's gymnastics. And I think some of the things that will resonate with our listeners and observers tonight is what it's been like for you during this pandemic. So I'm just really privileged to be able to talk to you tonight and hear some of the things you've been going through. And I'll hopefully share some things that might help our viewers understand what it's like to get back into the game again during this very challenging time.
Yeah, I mean, that's what Optimum Nutrition's Better Than Before is all about, just providing expert resources. And so I do have, honestly, a lot of very dear questions because I've been struggling a lot, especially in terms of injury. Like you can already see, I'm KT taped up on my elbow. And there's just been this whole process of me trying to come back slowly and be very organic with my, being better than where I was at before quarantine hit. And so I'm trying to take things super, super slowly. But I'm going to give you just a quick lowdown. I got a cortisone shot in my wrist a year ago. Okay. So then I think it was about May, which was right at the beginning of quarantine, started going to the at-home workouts, of course. And my wrist just started acting up again, which I don't know, is that about the time you'd say a cortisone might start wearing off?
It depends. It's amazing. There's such variability when people get cortisone injections. Sometimes they get nothing. Sometimes you get 3 months. Sometimes it eliminates the problem they're having. So a year is pretty good, honestly, for a tendonitis type picture or inflammation in the wrist joint. And if it's hampering you, I think it's safe, and it's safe to do again. But there might be some other things you could look at. I'm happy to talk about it offline to help you get what you need. But no, if you have to do it again and it worked last time, chances are it will work again.
Well, okay, see, I had the issue where I think it was overuse, of course. I went from, going and doing all this gymnastics. All of a sudden, I'm doing very little at-home workouts. And I was actually doing exercises that I think I don't normally do. And so that was part of why I felt like maybe my wrist was taking more impact than it should have. And so my big question really is there any advice you have for all the athletes out there that are also struggling with, maybe some injuries they had before going into quarantine and then things that they might have from quarantine going back into where they're normally at?
Yeah, no, I think obviously not all of our viewers are elite athletes like you are, but people are prone to get all the things that you're talking about, whether they're an amateur, collegiate, even an adolescent athlete in some of the sports that they're not able to participate in. And one of the biggest challenges is, look, all of us are kind of junkies for activities, but we're not getting the same access to training and strength and conditioning. And I will tell you, the pandemic has been an enormous curveball for a lot of us. And I'm seeing injuries that I haven't even seen before because people are changing the workout routines and not getting access to the gym and so forth. So I have to imagine for you, it's been particularly challenging. I mean, look, everything's been sort of displaced. I think we have a year, you got another year now that you get to prepare for Tokyo. And I have to imagine the challenges you're going through are the same challenge that our viewers are going through, those who want to stay athlete or are just trying to prevent injury.
Yeah, so what would you say? Is there a route that you should be taking to prevent your injuries when you go from dead nothing to, all right, now I need to get back to where I was 5 months ago? Is there certain, exercises that you might say that could be more preventative, or I guess measures that you might take in order to prevent these injuries further?
Yeah, I mean, the problem is that this concept of detraining it happens pretty quickly. But the good news is it's all reversible, and even our older athletes, it's reversible for them too. I'm seeing some strange injuries. For example, our baseball players, a typical baseball season when we cover some of our professional athletes, we'll have a few Tommy John injuries, things like that, right? Our youth athletes, they would get that same problem. Now I'm seeing acute fractures because these kids are going from nothing to something at a really high level. I'm seeing a lot more tendonitis and overuse injuries because people were detrained. So I think the important answer to your question is people have got to start slowly and ease into it. And you want to prevent the risk of overtraining. And don't forget about stretching. Don't forget about cool down and recovery. All those things are probably more important now than ever, and as well as cross training. We don't have access to the same things right now that we usually do. So you have to be a little bit creative to sort of get back into shape. But as I say, the good news is if you manage expectations properly, you and I can get all this stuff back, but we have to do it, in a different environment.
Yeah, actually, I really like that you brought up the cross training, because gymnasts, they generally don't run. And so the very first portion of me coming back and working with my strength and conditioning coaches was to do a lot of cardio and really bring my weight down to a certain point that, when I was doing heavier impact gymnastics, it wasn't going to be multiplied by the force that's also being pounded on. And so it was about getting in shape, burning the fat that I probably accumulated during that little bit of quarantine, and then building my heart and my lungs to a point where it's like, all right, now that I have this general fitness, now I can start targeting my more specified muscle groups. And then from there, it was like, all right, let's not dive right into the big muscles, the pecs, the biceps. Let's do all the supporting muscles first. And then from there, we're going to be able to focus on the big muscles, but building up from backwards to forwards in terms of like rings, very forward, shoulder dominant. So what do? We always started with the back of the shoulder, bringing balance before we started overloading the front, and try to avoid as many surgeries in this area as possible. But I didn't know if that's something that you guys also talk through with all the sports that you seem to work with.
Yeah, so we have some of our professional athletes when things started to change, first part of March, people were just shut down. And a lot of our discussion was, okay, we don't know exactly when we're going to ramp back up, but you can't just allow yourself to completely decondition. And if you do, let's talk about strategy, just like you're talking about, which is addressing muscle groups. Maybe it's small muscle groups leading to big muscle groups. And you have to, it's like a retraining paradigm that you haven't had to do that probably in your entire career. I mean, I imagine, in the beginning of this, you didn't know what to do, right? You didn't know where to go, what you can do to train, probably doing some at home. We had athletes that were used to being in competition, and all of a sudden they're completely boxed out from all the resources that they had. So I would say that what you described would be pretty typical. I mean, the good news is you're really knowledgeable. Some of the challenges that our other athletes have, but they don't have the same resources and exposure, but you can get a lot of this stuff online and learn about it. And fortunately, things are starting to transition back a little bit. I think we've learned to sort of live with COVID. We've learned to sort of do fitness with COVID, and now the gyms are opening, for example. And as long as you continue to, just because you're getting tired of it doesn't mean this is getting better. We just have learned to deal with it, right? So physical distancing, I have to imagine in your gyms you've had to do the same thing, as well as obviously proper hygiene. All of those things are really important, and wearing a mask when you're within 6 feet of someone. We've had to manage these athletes programs where they have to stay 12 feet away from each other before they can take their mask off because of the respiratory aspects and everything else. I imagine for you have the luxury of being in a big gym where you're not around a lot of other people. Not everyone has that, so they have to make sure, especially as health clubs open, that they have to abide by the rules of that state, the rules of that club. But most importantly, the stuff we've been talking about. It's physical distancing, it's not touching your face, your eyes, and so forth. It's washing your hands, cleaning surfaces, and it's wearing a mask, especially if you're within 6 feet. And by the way, if you're within 6 feet, avoiding doing that for a prolonged period of time. And you can do all that stuff and go to a gym and still train.
Yeah, no, we've actually done some great things at the Olympic Training Center out here. It took a while, though, for us to actually, because it was just me and one other guy that were able to train. And we had a team of 8, and then we slowly integrated more and more. And when we had the space out, we all had to follow the guidelines, washing hands before and after, mask and everything like that. But I think a big issue was the fact that training with just one person, when I'm used to having a team, it was just like this huge psychological change of how can I actually get as motivated and as pumped up as I used to, and being able, because you work with a lot of team sports, and how did athletes handle, that separation in your eyes?
Yeah, it's been a challenge, and I think that it's interesting because some of the athletes that I deal with, they also are making a living doing their sport, by the way. And
Yeah.
the pay grade can be very different for the MLB and the NBA from gymnastics, I'm sure.
Oh,
So
yeah, I'm
yeah,
aware.
yeah. So I'm trying to look what's going on in your background there. My guess is Optimum Nutrition, they can give you that stuff, and
They,
you're happy to get it.
oh, believe me, I'm
Yeah,
using it all.
yeah.
This is like, I had to really, some of these are like half used, and I'm like running low. So I'm like, all right, let me just get every half used or package
Right.
that I got.
Right. Yeah. So the psychological aspect. So I guess what I'm getting at is, we've had athletes, for example, that have been in the bubble and they've been in Orlando. The shortest amount of time that an athlete had to be there was 53 days away from their family. And that goes with this training staff and everyone else. So this can be a very, if you look at Optimum Nutrition survey, which they surveyed over 1,000 people, and the information is fascinating, asking about how all of us are kind of responding to this pandemic. And look, people are really stressed. There's a very high anxiety level. Most people feel that they can be doing a better job with nutrition and fitness than they currently are, but they cite all these obstacles, one of which is anxiety and probably depression for a lot of people. And this is something that we can't take for granted. So I've had to deal with a lot of athletes just one-on-one discussing those issues. They know how to train, they know how to do all that stuff, but the isolation and the fear component, which was certainly worse early on before we had a good understanding, and the inability to do your sport the way that people are accustomed to doing it. And again, not everyone who's listening to this is an elite athlete. I know everyone is going through this and trying just to stay in shape, do things properly, eat well, and so forth. And people are in various cycles on how they're managing it. I think as we're not on the other side of this, but I think, as I say, we've kind of learned to live with it. And I think the psychological aspects, people, if you ignore it, it's just very difficult to get to the other side. So I will tell you that, athletes are used to crushing it. Recreational people are used to doing it hard and getting out there and running and doing things and so forth. And no one knew which way to turn. It's getting a lot easier right now, I think, as we understand the things that are preventative and at the same time allow us to be really active and do it safely.
Yeah. Another part that, especially with the NBA finals and everything like that going on, these guys had such a quick turnaround. And I know for gymnastics, preparation is what builds your confidence. And so when you don't have as much time to prepare, and that's a lot with what I'm struggling with right now, is I still feel like I'm so behind. If I had to go and compete in the next couple of weeks, my anxiety would definitely be off the roof. And, being able to not just survive my routines, but to be able to do them well, that's a whole nother level of preparation. And I was wondering, have you had any incidences where, guys might not have been quite as prepared for that elite level, that showman type of stage? And if there was any ways that you could help bridge that gap a little bit faster?
I think the sort of psychological well-being of an athlete and the need for being totally intact depends on the sport. I would argue that gymnastics is one where, your head can play games with you and you've got to be completely plugged in and focused. There are some other sports which are, just brute strength and maybe football, you could take an inner lineman versus a running back or a quarterback. You've different positions and different requirements of sport probably weigh heavily in that way. Baseball is a tough one, right? Baseball is a head game as far as hitting and so forth and throwing and pitching and performance and accuracy. So I imagine it's different for every athlete. Look, if you have things that require a lot of hand-eye coordination and where precision, you have a very precision sport like what you have, your head's got to be in the right place. So I know for you, you and I haven't ever talked about this before, but I'm sure it's been a big deal because you've been out of competition and now you're getting back into it. I guess what you know is you have motor memory. You've done it before. What, six-time champion? Right?
Yeah.
It's not like you haven't done this before. So you have the past often predicts the future, right? So in your particular case, you know what it feels like when you're in the right place at the right time. You're going to get that back again if you haven't gotten it already. I think the important thing is for people to understand is that just because they may have lost it temporarily doesn't mean it's gone forever. And again, if you get some resemblance of what it felt like before in bits and pieces of your sport, any sport that you do, you get that confidence and you can kind of move forward. So you got to try it. It's not much different than an athlete getting back after injury. Think about how challenging some of your friends who have had, for example, ACL injuries. Gymnastics is a brutal sport. If you tear your ACL, you dismount, how you land, how you take off, all that stuff is really leg dependent. And it takes a lot to get your head connected to your knee again after you've had that reconstructed. This in some ways, what you're going through kind of mirrors that.
Yeah, no, I tore my Achilles in 2017, and so trusting that again would definitely took a little while. But I was wondering because a lot of people are at home and they're kind of going stir crazy. Did you have any resources for a lot of the athletes in terms of what you could do to be, healthy outlets, socially, mentally, anything that they could do that wasn't like Dennis Rodman's type of style of recovery. Something where it's like, hey, this is what I recommend you guys to do to keep your head in the right place.
I mean, I think, we had to be pretty resourceful. So a lot of the things that we have access to, when you think about it, there's a whole new industry that's been born to satisfy the needs that we have to remain active and healthy. So all these classes, for example, which were never available online, you can find the same instructors and do a video. You can do a 15-minute ab routine. You can get on and with an instructor and you can do a Peloton routine, CrossFit, everything that we used to do and go to a studio, you can now do at home. The other challenge is that you got to get outside. And I think, again, think about where you were in March and April and where you are now. We didn't know which way to turn. So I think what's helped a lot of people is just to get outside. And it's gonna be a challenge for those of us who live in the Midwest and colder states. That's gonna make it more difficult for some of us. I think you live in Florida.
Colorado.
You're in Colorado.
So it's gonna be cold. It's gotta be cold.
Yeah, so it's gonna be cold, but it's a dry cold.
That is. We do get the sun a lot. Blessed with Colorado.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
like 300, 400 days a year you get it. So
yeah,
yeah. But generally speaking, I think we've all had to be a little bit resourceful with this and look for different outlets. And I think the other thing is that this Optimum Nutrition survey was fascinating to read how people have socially, about 30 to 40% of people have sort of feel that they're isolated from their friends and haven't really maintained connectivity, right? And I think that's important for people to understand that that's a big part of our lives, having some degree of continuity with how we communicate with each other. And the isolation for many has been very challenging, and I think plays its toll. So I would argue, there's people who are doing Zoom calls on a weekly basis with their family, with their friends. That is really important because you no longer have that latitude and flexibility to go out and socialize and interact with people. And it can be, just very unfortunate, very challenging and isolating. So I think that can help people a lot. You have to push yourself to do it. And I think that's just part of one of the stools, the legs on the stool, as far as keeping that balance. That keeps everything else in check, including your training and your exercise, your fitness and your nutrition.
Yeah, well, I mean, going off that, I mean, a lot of feeling good mentally is also feeling good physically. And so those can translate together in terms of diet and, just actually getting outside, like you said, and releasing those endorphins. Is there any, how big of a role do you put into all your athletes' diets?
Diet's huge, and sometimes it's forgotten. Look, I think that the challenge is not everyone has the resources that elite athletes have, but the layperson has access to anything that you and I could ever have. Now, I'm not an elite athlete, but the things I have access to the same things you do, and it's not that that's the other thing that people cited in this Optimum Nutrition survey is the cost and the expense, because many people are under financial strain right now. But the first issue is that understanding that there is a very solid interplay between fitness and nutrition. And the second thing is that most of us can get it from just whole foods. It doesn't require a lot of extra stuff. That being said, the more you and I do, the more we physically tax ourselves, the more our muscles break down and need to sort of grow and come back and recover, the more we might need supplements. So, I know you've worked with Optimum Nutrition for a long time. I've been very fortunate to have the opportunity to work with them. It's based in quality. They're probably the biggest provider in the world for whey protein products with branched chain amino acids and energy drinks and things like that. I mean, my cabinets are full of it because I don't have the time to actually always eat and get access to food the way I need to. And if I'm training harder, it can be tough to just get it from Whole Foods. And I'll tell you, I'm probably a lot older than you are. And what happens when we get older, our muscles, we have this thing called sarcopenia, where our muscles get smaller and our ability to sort of absorb things gets less and less. This is all the things you have to look forward to, Sam.
You're freaking me out, man. I feel like I'm already getting there.
But the point is, there's ways to overcome that. You just have to understand that it's a very critical part of what we do, and ignoring it, I think, is an injustice for us. So lots of ways to get it, but I would argue that high quality whole foods are the way to start. But there's lots of options for supplements that are very safe. not that expensive, and that can round out any proper nutrition and exercise plan.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm always making a shake before my like heavy lift just so I can get it in my system as fast as possible, start that recovery process as fast as possible. And honestly, these amino drinks have like changed my life. Like drinking, like it's a good caffeine boost with the amino acids. And I've never really felt the benefits of amino acids before. But then once they sponsored me and sent them, I'm like, wow, this is like a well-rounded picture here.
Are you doing the fizzy ones, the narrow can?
Yep. Oh no, these things are awesome. These things are awesome.
That's my absolute favorite. That's my favorite drink by far.
Oh,
I've got a refrigerator full of that. So is that also the stuff you work with?
Yeah. No, I'm all about the watermelon's my favorite flavor.
Yeah.
Hands down. Well, okay. The last little piece that I got is, obviously gymnastics requires a lot of big apparatus, and I was wondering, a lot of athletes probably didn't get to have the resources of certain types of equipment. How would you go about telling most of your athletes of balancing out not having the resources, but still getting as close to the exercises and movements that they need to get them bridge the gap between where they are now and where they once were?
Yeah, so great resources out there. I mean, I think today Alex and Karina, for one of the other episodes with Optimum Nutrition's Instagram Live, addressed this exact issue. That's going to be on ON's YouTube channel, I think, in the near future, just like ours is going to be. There's going to be another Instagram Live workout. I think that's Friday night. Upcoming next Friday. But I would just tell you, for guys like me, I made ample usage of videos. So I set up in my basement a big screen, computer connected to it. I had access to the same sort of body pump workouts. I was doing the Les Matthews weights and things like that, and just did it. We just did it in our basement, and I felt like I was kind of getting the same workout. And then I realized there's all these other assets that you can get access to that are free. People are paying hundreds of dollars a month for clubs, and I support these clubs, and I want, I hope this is an important part of our society to keep these things going. But I'll tell you, there are alternatives, and they're really cost effective. Home yoga, home Pilates, things like that, all really easy to get access to, and you can mix it up now in a very easy way. So I think people have become accustomed to using alternatives. You can use bands, you can do body weight, you can get an entire workout without ever picking up a dumbbell or a barbell, and still do a really good job in getting a whole body workout. So you don't have to invent it. Those are all things you're available online. So,
Genius.
Do I get to ask a couple questions of you?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so I just really curious. You have probably lots of resources, but did the pandemic affect your training in a real way?
Oh, as soon as quarantine hit, I felt like every single day I was in a very, very deep decline, and I was at my best. I was ready to go to the games and get a medal, and I haven't gotten my Olympic medal yet. I've won 6 national championships, but I haven't gotten my Olympic medal. And so this year I've been building for 3 years to get to the point where I'm like, all right, I'm ready to compete. I'm ready to be my best. I finally have learned from all my mistakes. And then just a couple months before, it's like it stops, and now I can't touch the equipment, and my muscle memory starts going away. And so it was very dramatic, emotionally and physically, because I felt the decline. And then all of a sudden I was super antsy to get back and try to maintain in case the games did come back somehow. And all of a sudden my wrist started re-hurting again. And then it was like, all right, now I'm going to go get another cortisone. All right, now we're taking doing all this rehab. Now we're taking all these new meds. Now I'm compensating on my wrist with my elbow. So my wrist, I got a cortisone in, felt so much better. Now my elbow's hurt. And so it's been like this horrible chain of events, unfortunately. But I do think that we're finally managing it in a way where, I made a point to take it slow. That's been my biggest thing, because I'm one of the oldest guys in gymnastics right now. And so I'm just trying to get back to where I was as slowly as possible and safely. But it's like, even slowing it down, I still didn't seem to take it slow enough. But I think I'm fine. Like, these little minor injuries, I'm not pushing through, which I think is the big thing to tell everyone in the chat. It's like, when something hurts, you don't just keep using it. You take the time off. You say, hey, I need a moment. Let me take 2 weeks off of my arm, which I did once this elbow started hurting. I've just been doing my floor and vault. I'm not doing so much to the point that now my legs are going to start breaking, but it's like just enough to keep my mind sane so that I can be progressive somewhere and then also give this the time to heal that it needs.
When you think about where you were, like in the first, let's say January, February, last part of February, first part of March, you're on your sort of incline, probably hadn't peaked, and then this happened. If you had to weigh where you were then and then what you think you can do over the next year until, hopefully Tokyo, do you think you'll be in a better spot than you otherwise would serendipitously?
Yeah, so I took a very mindful approach of my comeback, and there were things that in my technique that I've never had the chance to reinvent. I have bad habits that I always work through, but never said, hey, I'm going to start from scratch and relearn how to do this new entry for my vault type of thing. And so starting from scratch actually gave me time to fix all the little details that I didn't like about my gymnastics, 6 months ago. And so I do feel like I'm progressing in a way that is going to make me a lot more confident and have a lot more showmanship once I do get healthy, essentially. And once I get all my skills back, I'm not just getting them back, I'm getting them back in a way that's better than they were before. And so I have to rebuild muscle memory, which has been the big challenge, but I've had the time to do it. And I think I'm going to be much better next year for it.
One of the things that always amazes me about gymnastics, and it's the biggest challenge too, is how old were you when you started doing gymnastics?
Yeah, I was 2. Both my parents were gymnasts, and they put me in those mommy and me classes.
Right. So I will tell you that they're the most challenged young athlete that I deal with, because it's not 5 days a week, it's sometimes 7 days a week. There's no off season. We often teach those who are skeletally immature that they should probably have 2 months away from their sport for recovery and cross training, and to become, we early on discourage single sport specialization, but gymnastics is full time, and it starts sometimes at the age of 2. And these young people have just insane flexibility. I imagine as you've gotten older, flexibility is potentially an issue. Would you be able to share some of your pearls with what you do now at this stage of your athletic career that you really have to pay attention to? Because I'm sure a lot of our viewers understand the value of the flexibility, or integrating things like Pilates and yoga and so forth. From your point of view, what can you share with us that might help some of our listeners with some of those techniques?
Well, so what I used to do is walk in the gym and just try getting to the splits, really forcing my shoulders and extension as far as possible. And that was just not the right way to go. You need to have a full body warm up. You need to start reaching those extreme ranges of motion with strength and actually firing the muscles, and then slowly building further and further, and then flex, further, flex, and really making sure that everything is activating in a way that's going to help you get to that range of motion, rather than just trying to break your legs and not having, you want to warm up the muscle fibers so they're loose and they're able to stretch, rather than when they're cold, you're more likely to get hurt. And so that was a big transition that I had probably a couple years ago. It honestly went on for way longer than it should have. And based off that, I started activating my whole body and doing a lot of yoga, a lot of Pilates type of stuff as my pre-stretch warm-up. And then I'll try, hitting my extreme ranges of motion, the splits, the pike, the shoulder stretch. And it's a lot of those things that really have helped me stay flexible as I've gotten older, because so many gymnasts just get so tight in their upper body, and they don't think about really opening their shoulders or their legs in certain ways that will allow them to be better in certain ranges of motion. And a lot of guys have surgeries because of that, this improper warm-up, essentially.
Right. We always say you got to sort of do your sport as part of your warm-up to do your sport. That's a big part of it. And when you think about, people talk about the core, which is sort of midsection. But for you, as a gymnast, your scapular, shoulder blades, your posture, that's actually a big part of your core as well. So there's the upper half that you have to kind of pay attention to. Should we maybe do a couple of questions?
Yeah, no, I'm ready for it. Let's go.
Let me see if I can. Oh boy,
anyone.
There's a lot of great questions. You got a lot of fans out there, brother.
Yeah. Hey, wait. Thank you, fans. Appreciate it.
Okay. Here's a great one. One question: have you changed your supplements since college? I know many of the supplements are not allowed in the NCAA. So what do you do now that maybe wasn't allowed when in college athletics?
All right, hold on. I do have a very funny but unfortunate story. So I was not well informed on, supplements and protein intake when I was younger. In my head, when I was in college, it was my first couple years, I made national team and they give you a financial stipend to help you get resources that are going to benefit your gymnastics. So I got this stipend and I started buying all these protein products. And me at the time, I thought the more protein you get, the stronger you're going to get. So I was probably consuming close to like 200 grams of protein after practice. And I thought like, oh yeah, I'm getting swole. Like this is going to be awesome. And we ended up going to the training center for a national team camp. And they did blood work and pee tests for us to, see how all our, how healthy we are. And they're like, Sam, you have like actual like protein chunks in your pee because your body can't possibly consume all the protein that you're taking. Like this is dangerous for your liver. You keep doing this, it's going to shut down. And so that was when I was like, okay, wait, there's definitely a science to this. So I recently started using Optimum Nutrition. I was probably like 2 years ago. So after that incident, I didn't use it at all through college. As I started working with the nutritionist and figuring out what's going to be better, all as I got older and started realizing it's a little more important than when I was 21, 22. That's about the time when I was like, all right, let me start getting into the science of it. Luckily, Optimum Nutrition sponsored me and was like, hey, we have everything under the sun. You've already worked with your nutritionist, so you know where everything needs to go now. You're not going to be taking 200 milligrams of protein, but we have everything. Try them all out, and it's honestly helped me feel a lot lighter, a lot stronger, a lot leaner. And those are the types of things of getting them in at the right time, making sure your macros and your macros are all going to be in a way that is beneficial for gymnastics, because I live like a 3-2-1 style where I want, one level of fats, multiply that by 2 times protein, multiply that by 2 for your carbs. So that's kind of like where I live, and these all have helped me build that foundation so that I can be as strong and lean as possible, because I mean weight plays a big issue in gymnastics. For me, it's like the lighter I am, the longer I can hold a lot of my rings exercises, but I also have to be strong enough to fire the muscles long enough to be able to hold them.
Here's another one. Maybe I'll do this one. This is, any of you guys have any advice for an ACL tear recovery? Let me ask you, have you had any of your teammates tear their ACL?
Yep, too many.
What's been the average length of time to get back?
6 months is about the time.
Really? That's
where
fantastic.
they can start,
Right.
using it, essentially. They're not back. It's 9 months for full gymnastics recovery. Right. And that's definitely the fastest that they seem to go. I've seen over a year. I've seen 16 months. Like it can vary.
Yeah, I had a level 9, is a level 9, right? Level 9 young woman come in last week who just tore her ACL. And, same thing. She's been doing this since 2 years old. And the big challenge with gymnastics is you got to maintain your conditioning, right? Mm-hmm. And do that safely so that the AC, you don't disrupt the surgery you just had. And at the same time, get them back so you don't have to work on that reconditioning at the time you're able to tolerate doing the things that you do. So dismounting and so forth, they have to change. I try to get you guys back on when you have the bars, any of those other things that require dismount, that they're landing on the other leg, for example, so they can start doing those skills, but they can respect the leg that was operated on. But as far as getting back after ACL surgery in general, this has been something that we've accelerated over the last several years. There is some interesting literature suggesting if you wait a year, that's the safest time. The challenge is it's all about the quality of the exercise, the rehab that you do during that time. So indeed, people could be ready at 6 months to go back. We want to focus on the things that led to the ACL tear to begin with. I'm sure in your sport, virtually every one of them is a non-contact injury. They happen because you land, your brain disconnects for just a millisecond, and all the forces go to the knee gives way, you tear your ACL. It's not because you're weak or you didn't have enough strength. There are just these microsecond things that happen neurologically where you're not protected. And we now know about 6 or 7 things that we can teach athletes during the recovery to safely get them back to minimize the chance of a re-tear. So, the basic advice is that there's a lot of great literature now on how to rehabilitate an athlete who does any sport, even if it's just running, to get them back. And it does depend on the sport. I can get a runner back in 12 weeks, but like you say, a gymnast, that's 9 to 12 months to get all your skills back. And I can't really let you go at a high level till you're about 6 months, you know?
Yeah, no, 100%.
You are my favorite gymnast ever. That was for you.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Dr. Cole rocks. Thank you. Sorry.
Hey, you gotta feel those.
Yeah. Let me find another one. Does everyone else see all these comments? Do you see these?
I'm seeing just the last one. I mean, if I'm scrolling through.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going back up because.
Anyone else got?
Yeah, go ahead.
Anyone else want to just throw out their questions in the most recent chat, and then we can be able to tackle them that way?
Yeah, that's a good plan. I'm going up. Is glutamine supplement worth taking? You ever take glutamine?
I can't say I've taken that one.
I know On has glutamine. There are supplements that relate to glutamine. I think the real challenge is that there are branched chain amino acids that you and I can't produce, and they are tough to get in whole foods. So this is a tough one to just isolate that. That's why I think whole foods are so important, though, because you can generally get most of the things we need there. And there are then supplements that place an emphasis on certain things that are tough to get in large quantities, like glutamine, like leucine, and so forth. So in general, I think there's good data for it, but it's probably not going to be for everyone. So let's see. Love to hear Caroline's question about favorite at-home exercise.
For me,
yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I mean, my favorite at-home exercise are V-ups like that. Or you know what? It recently changed. Russian twists. It's something that I like. I mean, feeling that, like, strengthening core, of course, is very important, but strengthening it through that twisting range of motion. I mean, gymnasts are twisting all the time, and that's actually helped me strengthen a lot. And because I used to get my iliopsoas used to tighten up a lot, and I feel like since I've started doing my Russian twist, it has a lot more strength and can take a lot more of that twisting impact than I used to be able to. And so I do feel like I've improved in my gymnastics just with that one exercise.
Great. Here, another one, and I like this one, is any advice for someone looking to take their fitness to the next level? I will tell you that, I had always been super conscientious, and I definitely fell off the wagon when I was early on in my career just because I had so many responsibilities. I just didn't prioritize it. So the things that I found to be particularly helpful are, blocking time, and this is especially for busy people, blocking time that you can own, that no one takes away from you, so you kind of know that is going to be your moment. You don't have to tell anyone, you don't have to justify it. This is your time, you lock it in for your exercise routine. I would say that it has to be a minimum of 3 times a week at a reasonably high intensity for at least 45 minutes. I think the other things are to have real goals, like pick a goal, and not just any goal, a goal that's attainable. Say, look, I want to achieve this. It could be I want to train for a marathon. I want to be able to do a 5K at this rate. It could be I want to have a body mass index or a leanness factor at this level. Pick a goal that's attainable, not something that's not reachable, that's truly attainable. I think it's also helpful to potentially challenge yourself and work out with others. It's much easier if you're doing this with someone else who can help you get to the next level, assuming you have a reasonable goal. So doing it in tandem can actually be very helpful to help you get to the next level. Those are the things that I think about off the cuff about those who are really interested in elevating their fitness to the next level.
Oh, yeah.
Let's see here.
Am I going to ever write a book? I can't say I'm going to write a book. It's crossed my mind, but I don't know if I really have the skill set for something like that. But I'm doing my YouTube series, so that's my way of writing a book, I guess.
Good.
For the final year of my gymnastics career leading up to the Olympic Games. So, and I think someone asked, yeah, I'm going to do episode 10 tomorrow. So for that one question.
I'm sure you have a lot of wisdom to share. And, the greatest thing about working with elite athlete is the things you say don't necessarily only apply to an elite athlete. It can be for anyone who's interested in staying super active and getting to the next level. So I'll start tuning into your YouTube. Okay. Look, I think it's, sorry.
I will say the one thing that seems to be the biggest factor is I'm actually learning so much more about what is going to be, about like adapting, because everything I'm doing right now is so different than what it actually used to be. And so it's really having an open mind is what I'm learning. Even as I'm getting older, I still haven't perfected it. It's all still changing and getting better as gymnasts figure more out. Like, I'm studying from international gymnasts all over the place and really learning from everyone else in the world, because they're coming out with new techniques, and just being able to have the open mind to say, hey, maybe I have been doing it wrong. Now I'm going to actually try to do it right, and then be better because you actually have that open mind. So those are the things that I've been learning. And it's kind of crazy because I don't have all the answers. I just listen a lot more.
Well, words of wisdom, and maybe that's a good transition point. I really enjoyed talking to you and listening to you, and you're an inspiration. I wish you the absolute best over the coming year during your training, and hopefully things will fall into place. We'll emerge on the other side, and Tokyo's going to happen, and you're going to crush it. I want to also just let people know that tomorrow night you can tune in again. It's a privilege to do this. Tomorrow night's going to be a little different flair. I'm with Tyler Cameron. Lots of our viewers tonight probably know who Tyler is, and we're going to talk about the importance of sleep. And then Tyler's going to do something pretty amazing. So this is at 8 p.m. Eastern time. Tyler on Instagram Live, Optimum Nutrition Instagram Live, is going to read everyone a bedtime story. Okay, so we're starting an hour later just because there's going to be a bedtime story when it's all over. So it's been a privilege to chat with you over the last hour, and I just want to thank you for all you do and wish you the best of luck.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure catching up with you as well. I've honestly learned so much already. But yeah, Optimum Nutrition has a whole week of great Better Than Before programming. So they're going to be back at it at 11 a.m. Eastern time tomorrow with a session on supplementation for health and performance. So check out the full schedule on Optimum Nutrition's Instagram feed or at optimumnutrition.com/BTB live. So thank you all for joining in. Really appreciate it. You guys all have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll see you guys tomorrow morning.
Be safe.